neither does Matt Ryan, who continues to play well into his 30s. He's got 4,924 passing yards plus 35 touchdowns to his name last season. In terms of quarterback rankings, Matthew, you have him at 7. I have him at 6, which is one slot ahead of his QB ADP of 5.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable. He was not great in 2017.
Yeah.
He was the MVP in 2016. Where is the, are you at all nervous of this, like peak and valley sort of
right? So he was
trajectory.
He
to
was
his
literally
career.
the MVP of the NFL in 2016,
and in some ways, a fantasy MVP too, because he was so great,
unbelievable, and he went late in
where you
drafts,
drafted him, etc.
100%.
Yep,
was not great in 2017.
Yes, not great at all.
And then last year, the second best quarterback in fantasy. And I don't know if you didn't have him on your roster, you don't really realize that because the Falcons had a bad year.
Right.
But Matt Ryan was unbelievable last year. QB 15 in 2017. Last year, again, QB 2, 355 fantasy points, 7 different games with 25 or more fantasy points. The only other quarterback that can say that, Patrick Mahomes. So, and you look at sort of the underlying numbers, similar to 2016. Dirk Cutter, now the new offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons.
New again.
And that's what I was going to say. New, new in quotes, because he's formerly the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. That's what he was doing before he left to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 3 years in Atlanta and under Cutter, Matt Ryan had 2 top 7 campaigns in those 3 years. And remember, one of those years, 2013, Julio missed 11 games.
Right.
So it's hard to, judge the offense when you don't
Could have been even better, yeah.
Could have been better. I believe that 2013 season was the year that Matt Ryan was down. But anyway, with the one that Julio missed the 11 games. But anyway, so Matt Ryan had 2 good years and 1 bad year, basically, under Dirk Cutter from a fantasy point of view.
Yep.
Doesn't run. I might be too low on him. I'm a QB 7. He's going to QB 5. I do have Carson Wentz and Baker Mayfield ahead of him.
He's one of my favorite values amongst the elite quarterbacks.
I agree with that.
Because if you look at his ADP, and you have this page up, I do not, but you mentioned it's 5th amongst quarterbacks. But look at the premium that you are paying on quarterbacks 1, 2, and 3 relative to Matt Ryan, quarterback 5. So Patrick Mahomes 17.4.
So
overall.
Mahomes is going in the 2nd. Rodgers and Watson are going in the 5th. And then Andrew Luck, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, all going in the 7th.
Yeah, so great value right there for those 3 players. Matt Ryan, an awesome player, and I expect the weapons are all there. They're loaded. They have every piece in place.
We talked about Wentz the other day. He's going in the 10th. I mean, that's crazy value too. But anyway, but Matt Ryan in the 7th versus Aaron Rodgers in the 5th or Watson in the 5th, like, come on.
Yeah.
Or even Mahomes, as magical as Mahomes is,
sure.
Mahomes in the 2nd versus Matt Ryan in the 7th?
Right. I mean, Matt Ryan has 40 touchdown passing upside for sure. Yeah. So we feel good about Matt Ryan as a value and the guy you could start going into the season. Part of the reason why is his backfield is back to full strength. Devonta Freeman played in just 2 games last year. Really frustrating. Obviously, he tried to come back late in the season. Did not work out for him. It was the Tevin Coleman show. You have been running back 18, which is another reason why you are brilliant. I have been running back 18 as well. His ADP is 14th amongst running backs. Yeah. So people like him a little bit more than you and I do. Maybe we're a bit concerned about the injuries at this point of his career.
I think that's what it is. So there's a couple of things here. And I have to be honest. Devonta Freeman is one of the hardest players for me to rank all positions this year.
How come?
Because I think there is a much wider range of outcomes for Devonta Freeman than there is for a lot of other players at his level. And by that I mean, like, if Devonta Freeman stays healthy, like to your point, there's no Tevin Coleman here,
right?
And so you've got Ito Smith and Brian Hill and whatever, Allison. We'll talk about all those guys, but honestly, like, it's going to be the Devonta Freeman show on a very good offense. So if he is healthy the full year, this is a guy that could be a top 5, top 7 running back. I mean, here's a guy that since 2016, he's top 10 in terms of yards per carry. He averages 4.6, and this is among qualified running backs with at least 250 carries since 2016. Okay, but part of the problem is the decline in touches, even when he was healthy, right? So starting in 2015, 22 touches a game to 17 to 16. Right. And then, obviously last year he missed most of the season. He was hurt.
Right.
So it's hard. And he hasn't been involved in the passing game as much.
I kind of wonder, though, if that's going to actually this is going to be a bell curve thing, right? Like an inverted bell curve. Like he went down over those past 3 years when Tevin Coleman was there. Now, without a clear cut established number 2 back, maybe they ride Devonta Freeman harder, like fully healthy. Right. By the way, this is a year where like a massive evaluation year for head coach Dan Quinn. Another bad season might put his job in peril. Like I think Devonta Freeman, again, under new but old offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter, could be in line for a huge role.
He could be. They drafted a couple of offensive linemen. Like we expect their line to be better this year as well.
I think the only concerns for me are the health. He's not a huge guy. He's like 5. He's built. He's thick. He's like 5. 5'9", 5'10", 220 or something like that. But still, it's a track record now. He's been hurt. He's been banged up a lot. And I have one more concern about the Falcons that I think.
But it's just sort of hard. Maybe this is we should circle this, and when we get Stefania back, I would love to get her sense on Devonta Freeman. But it's just one of those things. So it's like he could be a top 5 to 7 guy.
Sure. Well, he has been in stretches before.
Exactly. But he also could just like completely bottom out again because again the last couple of years he keeps getting hurt.
Right. He keeps getting hurt. By the way, that like top 5 year was like 3 seasons ago. So like at some point, like having a top 5 season on your resume is irrelevant relative to what your value is. But going forward.
I'll give you 2 quick stats that Thirsty Cal threw up here, which I think are impressive. Right? Here's the list of players with more rushing yards and more yards per carry than Devonta Freeman since 2016. Ezekiel Elliott, Mark Ingram, Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, good company to be in.
That's the entire list.
Pretty good
players
company.
with 850 or more rushing yards and 300 or more receiving yards in 3 of the past 4 seasons. Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Devonta Freeman. That's the entire list. So I mean, like it's. When he's been there, he's been super productive, and the Falcons had a chance to pay Tevin Coleman this year, and they did not. So there's you would think, I guess, the team feels good about where Freeman is.
But if we have to protect ourselves, there are a few different backs in the backfield that could be sort of the handcuff, or maybe not, to Devonta Freeman. Ito Smith, 4th-round pick last year at a Southern Miss, the Judge, I believe they call him.
Yep.
There's also Brian Hill, a 5th-round pick out of Wyoming, who was cut, landed with the Bengals, got cut by the Bengals, landed back with the Falcons, and then Qadree Ollison, 5th-round pick, I believe this year, 5th-round pick, out of Pitt. Is the fact that I just named 3 names enough evidence that like you can't use a draft pick on any of them?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to, Brian Hill actually looked good in the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, he did. He's had a good camp so far.
And there was some nice coach speak about him after that. I guess if I had to sort of pick a late flyer, give me Brian Hill, but I don't know that I have any level of confidence that any one of those 3 is going to emerge in a Tevin Coleman-like role where you feel like they would have standalone value. Because Tevin Coleman had standalone flex value like in 12, 14-team leagues last year. I don't have that sense or confidence in any of those guys. There are other guys that I think have a higher upside that I'd rather take a flyer on.
Qadree Ollison, by the way, was a mispronunciation on my part.
Okay.
There. My apologies.
Apology accepted.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Ollison family. I think I mispronounced it as well earlier in the show. Did I? Yeah, Secret Squirrel's nodding his head.
I accept your apology as well.
There you go. If we get clarity that like, hey, Brian Hill's the guy or Ito Smith is the guy.
It changes everything.
Then it does because of the injury history of Devonta Freeman. But if I was drafting today, would I target, and I managed to get Freeman on my team, would I target one of those guys? No.
I feel the same way about that. We're going to turn the mic over right now to Daniel Dopp for a little talk about Julio Jones. Your thoughts, Daniel?
You're one of those never Julio guys, right?
Yeah, you know what? I saw that Julio's going to score, or going to get 3,000 receiving yards this year.
Yeah,
huh, guys?
I know.
Did you guys see that?
I did see that.
That was
funny.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm going to grow a beard this year, too.
Are you?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, good
absolutely.
for you, buddy.
100%, yeah. Matthew's going to grow hair back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, hang on. You're going to grow a beard this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about bearing the headline. You've hit puberty? Like,
you blow the horn?
Hello, sailor.
Can you blow the horn? Can you blow the horn? Come on. Cut me a break, man.
Come on. He's a married man now. You understand how it works at all.
He's a child bride.
My voice cracks like only once a show as opposed to 4 times a show. NBD. Let's talk about Julio Jones. Makes me feel better about myself. Julio's amazing. We don't need to recreate the wheel here with the Julio conversation. He had 113 catches for 1,677 yards last year, plus 8 touchdowns. The most important thing, Matthew, is after many years of seemingly not being able to figure out how to use Julio appropriately in the red zone, all of a sudden the Falcons kind of got it right with Julio Jones.
Yeah. I mean, Julio Jones is good. Hashtag analysis. There you go.
That was riveting. Thank you.
What do you want me to say about Julio Jones? He's one of the best wide receivers in fantasy. We've
got him both as a top 4 wide receiver.
He's super consistent. To your point, by the way, about can you throw your best player the ball when you get in close? Weeks 14 through 17 last year, 36.4% of the red zone target share for Julio Jones. As the season went on, seemed like they finally got to figure it out there with Julio. But he's
a top 5 wide receiver. He's a back end of the first round pick, depending on your league size. He's a stud.
Yeah, it just I have Beckham over him. So
it's same idea, right?
Nitpicking, right? I'm at wide receiver 4,
right?
But they're all right there. Like, you want to go Michael Thomas, you want to go Julio.
It's different than running backs, where like there's a precipitous drop at some point. For wide receivers, there's like 5 or 6 guys that are really, really awesome.
It's just personal preference there. The for me, I think Beckham has a chance to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. I think if everything goes right for Beckham, and there's an if there, right?
I feel the same way about Julio, though.
But of course,
right?
Well, of course, they all have that. They all have that upside,
right?
Anyways,
let's talk about the
Julio's
other
awesome.
Falcons wide receivers.
Hashtag analysis.
Right.
Julio
is awesome. Calvin Ridley was really good last year. He had 10 touchdowns. But Matthew, it's about Calvin Ridley here, but let's lump Mohamed Sanu into this conversation as well. It's sort of like the other wide receiver, not named Julio, because it's pretty rare for an offense to be like the Rams last year, where they had 3 guys who you could consistently rank in the top 20 and be right more often than not. For Atlanta, the question for Calvin Ridley is this. Even if the touchdowns go down this year, can he be a better fantasy asset than he was last year? And if so, like, is there even room? Is there a third seat at the table for Mohamed Sanu?
I think Mohamed Sanu is sort of what he is, right?
Didn't we call him like the quintessential flex last year? Like, he is the definition of a flex play.
He's like, I need 8 points.
Right.
Like
I won't be mad if you give me 8.
If
you give me 18, sweet, but like I expect 8.
Yeah,
or 10.
8 to 10 or whatever. Like, I need 4
5 catches,
4 for 54 or something like that.
Yep.
5 for 52, something like that. I mean, that's and maybe you hope maybe he throws a touchdown.
Right, it'd be sweet.
Right. I mean, but so Ridley's interesting. And when you say a better fantasy asset, what I think you're meaning is, could he be a more consistent fantasy asset? Like, out of we always talk about Tristan's consistency ranks, and he does a great job there. Check it out on ESPN.com. Tristan H. Cockcroft's consistency rankings. Of course, I'm a company man. Tristan looked at 51 different wide receivers last year that he considered that qualified wide receivers, right?
Yep.
Calvin Ridley, 43rd.
Yeah, not great.
43rd out of 51 qualified wide receivers. Antonio Callaway, slightly more consistent.
Is that right? Well, he's consistently like below average, but still more consistent.
I mean,
than
more
than
Calvin Ridley. If you take out the games against the Saints, right? I mean, those are the 2 games where Ridley just sort of went
crazy
off,
against New Orleans.
Right? Caught 15 passes in those 2 games against New Orleans. But if you take out those 2 games, guy averaged 10.36 fantasy points per game last year, right? I mean, basically, if you excluded the actual version of Calvin Ridley, he would have been wide receiver 50 last year.
So I've got him as a low end.
Again, if you take out the Saints games. Then.
Right. I've got him as a low end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 28. That's behind his ADP amongst wide receivers of 25. You're lower on him. Would you not feel comfortable using Calvin Ridley as a starter in your lineup entering next season?
Correct. Like, he's on the hate list. So he's on the hate list because of where he's going in ADP. Look at where he's going. He's going basically, his ADP is wide receiver 25.
Yeah.
Like, just to give you an idea of like who's going in that range, wide receiver 25. So he's going in the same range as Chris Godwin, as Tyler Boyd, as DJ Moore.
See Jarvis Landry right there?
Jarvis Landry, Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
Is basically, Tyler Lockett's going 4 picks ahead of him. So he's basically going in the same round on ESPN.com. Like, I would prefer any of those players to Calvin Ridley, because all those players, Lockett, Godwin, Boyd, like, they all have, very specific roles. Sammy Watkins is a little bit more of a, same with Tyler Boyd has more of a, DJ Moore has more of a specific role, right? I mean, think about DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel last year. Both of them last year had more double-digit fantasy point games than Calvin Ridley. There were 8 receivers in the NFC South that had more such games, including Mohamed Sanu. Like, so much of his production were from those couple of crazy games that it just, and if something were to happen to Julio, okay. But as long as Julio Jones is healthy, and by the way, as long as Devonta Freeman is healthy, and Austin Hooper, who we're going to talk about in a minute here, keeps emerging, like, I just don't know that Calvin really gets enough target share to be a consistent fantasy force when you consider his ADP. Like, I think he's a nice player.
Right.
But to go with Calvin Ridley over Chris Godwin, over Tyler Lockett, over guys that are like the number one wide receiver on the team, or guys that we expect to have a significant target share, I don't know.
I'm a little bit more bullish because I'm banking on the fact that he's going to be a lot better as a second-year pro because he was, by many people's estimation, the best receiver prospect in last year's class. You just mentioned Austin Hooper. Let's get to Mr. Hoop, who, believe it or not, I mean, he was, I don't know if quietly, right? But last year, pretty solid, but sort of in clusters, Matthew, right? Like, he had 3 games with 9+ catches.
Yeah.
And yet the problem was low yards per catch average and so many games where those, like, 9-catch game would be followed up with like a 2-catch game for 17 yards. So is he even like a startable tight end going into this year?
I think he's a startable tight end going into this year, but like he's at the low end. So I have him as tight end 9. His ADP is tight end 14, which I think is weird. I mean, this is a guy that was a top 10 fantasy tight end last year, continues to make improvements.
More of a reflection of the position, I think, than anything else.
Fair enough, but I mean, he was tight end 6. I mean, it was. So, I mean, like, yeah, I understand the position was down and there were people that were injured, but still, I mean, 71 catches last year, 4th most among tight ends.
Yep.
Caught over 81% of his targets. That led the tight end position. And in fact, it was the highest catch percentage by a tight end over the past 15 seasons.
Okay.
So I think he is earning the trust of Matt Ryan. They're finding different ways to use him. And I don't know, I think he's a certainly nice value. Again, he's currently going as tight end 14 here. Now, if you want to talk about a concern, the concern is lack of red zone targets, just 5 last year for Austin Hooper. But my expectation is, again, as you talk about Calvin Ridley taking another step, every year that Austin Hooper's been in the NFL, he has improved his stats, he's improved his playing, and I would expect him to take yet another step this year. Given how poor the position is, we expect this offense in Atlanta to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And so give me a guy that is the guy on a pretty good offense once you get past the elite, once you're in that 8 to 12 range.
Contract year for Austin Hooper coming up. We'll be right back to talk about.
So you're down on Austin Hooper.
Well, I got him at tight end 12. I just my thing with tight ends is like I'd rather. Obviously, we all prefer the top 3 tight ends, but there are others who I think, and we'll talk about one of them in just a moment, have a chance to be featured more prominently in their offense than Austin Hooper. That I don't
disagree with that. Yeah. I mean, I have a tight end 9, but I'm just saying, if you've completely punted on the position, where's Austin Hooper going? Austin Hooper's going like crazy.
Tight end 14.
Well, I know he's going 14, but I'm just trying to think like he's going in the 15th round.
Right. So
my point is that like I think he's a name to keep in mind if you've punted on the position and you're looking there in the double-digit rounds.
Okay.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.